as a TV show fan, I hate to admit this, but the book was better. I was a huge fan of the Wheel of Time TV series, but long story short, I had to know what happened after it got canceled. So now that I've finished the 700 plus page first book in the series, we have to talk. If you're curious about the series but intimidated by its sheer size, or you love the TV show as much as I do, then you're in the right place. But fair warning, there are going to be spoilers ahead. I'm talking plot details and everything in between. So if you're a person that does not like spoilers, I would just maybe come back later, because what I don't want you to do is come in my comment section saying that I ruined the book for you. And also, there is so much packed into this book, and I've attempted to include as much as possible from my notes and my memory, but help me out. Drop any major ahas, plot points, nuggets, anything that you can think of that I couldn't squeeze into this video down below. All right, let's set the scene. Very different from the show, we meet Lews Theron straight out the gate, no preamble, we meet this man, okay? And we meet him in a moment where he is literally out of his natural born mind. He has gone crazy, and he's literally calling for and looking for his wife and his children, who so happen to be in the room with him, but no longer amongst the land of the living, if you get my drift. And Ishmael appears out of nowhere, but decides to gift him, and I do mean the word gift very loosely, but Lews realizes what he's done and literally destroys everything, including himself, Ishmael, and everything in between, by channeling this massive amount of one power. And that is just the prologue. I mean, fast forward 4,000 years, we're dropped into chapter 1, and we're in this quiet region called the Two Rivers, in this little village called Emond's Field specifically. And think of the Shire, but without hobbits, and make it sheep farming. I mean, life here is simple, and it is very isolated. The Two Rivers folks are so out of the loop that many of them treat outside events like wars and dragons and magic like distant legends, if you will. And it's one of those places where everyone knows everyone and nothing ever happens. At least until now. So we meet our first main character, whose POV most of the book is written in, and he's living his best farm boy life with his dad Tam, and they're heading to Emond's Field for this big festival called Bell Time. And once they get to the village, we meet Mat and Perrin. And even though Bran, Mat, and Perrin have grown up together, they could not be more different. And Mat is just that friend who is always joking around. He's a prankster. He gets on everybody's nerves, but he's super lovable, you know, so you put up with all of his shenanigans. And Perrin, on the other hand, is this gentle giant of the group. He's the blacksmith's apprentice. He's the type that thinks before he does, and he thinks really slowly, but he eventually does. And I think this is the reason why a lot of people think that Perrin is a bit slow, but I think the truth is he's just quiet. So next up, we meet the ladies of Emond's Field. And first up, we have Egwene, who is basically the village princess, and she's the daughter of the mayor, who also owns one of the inns in town. And she's smart, determined, and low-key is not worried about getting married, even though that's what everybody is talking about. She just doesn't come right out and say it. She's the type to really, I would say, if you tell her to do something, she's gonna do it twice just to prove you wrong. And her and Rand have this thing for each other. They haven't really gotten romantic of sorts in the books, but if we want to call a spade, I think that Rand likes her more than she likes him, but we'll get into that later. Egwene is actually starting training under the village wisdom, and she's learning how to heal and tell the weather and all of those things, which brings me to the wisdom of Emond's Field, Nynaeve. And in the Two Rivers villages, the wisdom is the woman who heals the sick. She gives advice. She predicts the weather. I mean, she does everything in between. And Nynaeve is actually the youngest village wisdom that they have had, at least in recent history. And a lot of people have an issue with this, but you know, she really doesn't care because she does not take any mess from anyone. And she's super proud and protective and stubborn as a mule. I mean, this lady has a stubborn strength the length of a mile. And one thing I do want to know is that this world is a matriarchal leaning society. So men can hold certain positions of power. Well, some, not all of them, but some. And it's really just a women-led society, which I think is really awesome, especially because this book was written in the the 90s. Another thing is women are the only ones allowed to wield the one power. It's not that men can't, but they're just not allowed to because they can't do so without slowly losing their minds, as we saw in the prologue with Lews Theron. And this basically happened because thousands of years ago, the Dark One tainted the male form of the one power, and a whole bunch of things happened after that, which we'll get into later. But anyways, they're just not allowed to because of what happens when they do. But back to Emond's Field. So we're in the fun and the revelry of preparing for bell time, and in rides this mysterious traveler on this horse named Moiraine. And she's looking all regal and composed, and she is accompanied by a stone face, definitely not her boyfriend bodyguard, named Lan. And Moiraine introduces herself simply as a traveler and offers a token gift to the trio of boys. We later find out that she is not who she says she is. She's actually an Aes Sedai, and Moiraine's coming in town is a big deal, specifically because most villagers haven't seen an Aes Sedai in living memory. But when an Aes Sedai shows up in your quiet village, run. Run, baby, run, because that means the trouble is not too far behind. We also meet this wandering gleeman named Thom Merrilin, and he knows a whole lot about a lot. And last but definitely not least, we meet this creepy peddler named Padan Fain. And he's a traveling merchant who comes in for different festivals, bringing different news about what's happening in the outside world. And remember, most of the villagers think that these are just fantastical stories. But he tells them a story about a war happening in Geldon and a man proclaiming himself to be the Dragon Reborn. However, Moiraine believes that one of the five, either Rand, Mat, Perrin, Egwene, or Nynaeve, just might be the chosen one, the Dragon Reborn, fated to save the world or destroy it. Cue the dramatic music. Now that we've set the scene, on the night of Belltime's Eve, called Winter Night, Emond's Field is attacked by these creatures called Trollocs. And imagine a zombie-like orc, but with an animal face, and they're skilled with weapons. They attack the village looking for someone, or maybe a couple of someones. 3 guesses as to who they're looking for. But anyways, before the attack, Tam feels within his bones that something is coming. He locks the doors, and he grabs a sword with a heron on it. And mind you, he's supposed to be a sheep herder. So what is he doing with a heron-marked blade? Put a pin in that for later. So Tam and Rand fight and they escape, but not before Tam is gravely injured. And as Rand is basically dragging Tam through the forest to the village so that he can be healed, Tam is having a fever dream of all fever dreams. And Rand basically finds out that his daddy, he ain't really his daddy, at least not by blood, and that he also has a past. And he's rambling about Rand's birth and his birth mother, finding Rand in the Aiel War and Avenda Sora, and a whole lot more. And while all of this is happening, on the other side of the Two Rivers, Perrin's family farm is also hit with Trollocs. And in the chaos of everything, Perrin picks up an axe. Put a pin in that for later. And then Mat as well is fighting alongside with Moiraine, his father, and Lan. And Moiraine and Lan basically out themselves as Aes Sedai and Warder. And the village barely fends off this attack. I mean, the damage is done. Many are unalive, injured, houses are burned, and everyone is just terrified. No one in the Two Rivers has ever seen a Trolloc, a Fade, an Aes Sedai, a Warder, none of that. And mind you, this is just chapter 6. And I, at this point, was just shocked because season 1 up until this point had not covered any of this. But you gotta keep in mind that the show and the book are distant cousins. They aren't twins. They aren't twins. So after the attacks, Moiraine basically volunteers Rand, Mat, and Perrin that they need to leave Emond's Field because the Trollocs are going to come back because now their leader knows for sure that they are there. And in an effort to draw away the danger from their friends and their family, they decide to leave. But as Rand is telling Tam that he's leaving, Tam drops one of my favorite quotes of the book. And he says, "You listen sharp, think deep, and guard your tongue." Baby, if only more people took heed to this quote, we would be better off. But anyways, not knowing that they plan to leave, the villagers attempt to bully Moiraine and Lan out of the village because they think that they are really the central cause of the Trollocs showing up and not the boys, because they don't know that yet. But there's a whole lot of back and forth that happens in the village. But what's important is the story that Moiraine tells them about Manetheren. And it's this story about this great ancient kingdom that stood up to the Dark One's enemies during the Trolloc Wars. And it turns out that the people of the Two Rivers aren't just sheep farmers. They are actually descendants of the Manetheren. And at least for me, this was one of those moments where I was like, man, I really wish this was in the show, because it just shows that these boys aren't random. It really hits different because you really feel the weight of their heritage in this story. And as they prepare to leave, Egwene shows up and she refuses to be left behind. She is basically like, where are we going? She has just always dreamed of leaving the Two Rivers, and she is not going to miss this opportunity just because it's dangerous. And this is definitely not received well by the boys, which honestly really annoyed me, because even though this is a matriarchal leaning society, there are definitely moments where the boys, they really just try to mansplain things and convince Egwene that she doesn't know her own mind, and they really just try to tell her what to do. And I'm like, chill. Like, y'all need to worry about your own selves because y'all aren't making the best decisions. But anyways, I will just say this. Egwene does dismiss the boys' story about being chased by the Trollocs, and I think that this is something that she does a lot in the book, where when she's faced with things that she's not ready to accept, she compartmentalizes, she dismisses, and she also deflects. And I think this is really one of her Achilles' heels, because we'll get into that later. Put a bit into that. But after thinking about it, Moiraine agrees to let Egwene join them on their journey. And guess who else decides to crash this party? The Gleeman, Tom Merrilin. And he says that he wants to play in Tar Valon, but really, I just think that he doesn't trust Moiraine, and he's built this connection of sort with the boys, and he really just wants to protect them. Now, we have everybody here except Nynaeve, which we'll talk about later, but Rand, Mat, Perrin, and Egwene are getting ready to leave behind everything that they've ever known, with Moiraine, Lan, and Tom, and they're essentially racing into the night with the Trollocs and the Madril and all of the Dark One's people looming behind them and chasing after them. So the immediate plan is to reach the safety of Tar Valon, which is a city of Aes Sedai, where Moiraine says the boys will be protected. But the journey to get there is far from an easy task. The first leg of their journey is to get to the city of Berlin, and first they need to get to the next village, which is Terran Ferry, to cross the river and hopefully put some distance between them and the Trollocs. And there is this intense chase where the Trollocs and the Fates catch up to them, and they're running for their lives, and Moiraine has to use the One Power to hide their escape across the river. And on the road to Berlin, the group dynamics are starting to shift. Egwene is fascinated by Moiraine, and Moiraine tests Egwene and confirms that she has the ability to channel the One Power with some training. And Egwene is ecstatic, and the boys, on the other hand, are not. This goes back to them trying to tell her what to do, which is just very annoying because she knows her own mind, and why are you telling her what to do? But anyways, Tom starts mentoring Mat, Rand, and Perrin and random skills like juggling and storytelling, while Lan also begins giving the boys lessons on how to use the weapons that they took from them from the village. And after a time, they finally reach Berlin, and so much happens in this city. My goodness. But first up, we have the Children of the Light, and I can't stand them, both in the book and in the show. The Children of the Light are a bit of religious, no, they aren't a bit, they are definitely religious zealots who are dedicated to rooting out evil, corruption, wherever it can be found, to their own definition of what evil is. And they refer to themselves as the Children, and everyone else calls them White Cloaks, which they absolutely can't stand. So that's what I'm going to call them as well. And the name essentially comes from the white cloaks that they wear over their armor. And the White Cloaks basically label anything that they don't understand or anything that doesn't fit into their norms as evil. And in Berlin, we also meet Min, and Min is able to see auras and have visions around people, and she drops so many cryptic hints, and the foreshadowing in her visions, plentiful, okay? Plentiful. And on top of all of that, the boys are also having very spooky nightmares that include this fiery man who calls himself Bialzamon. put a pin in that for later. And if that is all not enough, Nynaeve catches up to them because she's been tracking them, and she comes thinking that she's going to rescue them. However, after she hears all of the stories about the Trollocs and the Dark One, even she has to admit that they can't safely go home. So Nynaeve decides to join the party, partly to keep an eye on Moiraine, who she can't stand, and also because I think she just feels this great responsibility for the boys because she is their wisdom. But guess who also shows up in Berlin? Padan Fain. And the boys thought that he was unalive, but nope, he is not. And he tells the boys not to tell anyone that they saw him. Very suspect. And the group isn't even able to rest for long in Berlin because Rand is approached by a fade that almost unalives him, but he stops for many reasons, which we won't get into. And as they're trying to leave, the White Cloaks try to stop them. And there's this whole back and forth, and Moiraine ends up having to use one power so that they're able to escape. So fast forward a bit, and the group is yet again traced by Trollocs and Madril, and they are forced to seek the refuge in an abandoned, creepy, ancient city of Shadar Logoth. And the city is so creepy and deadly that even the Fades are reluctant to go in. So that should tell you how deadly this city is, that even the creatures of the night, the creatures that are part of the Dark One's army, don't even want to go into this city. And the group is basically jumping from one frying pan into a different frying pan. And while camped out at Shadar Logoth, the boys, Matt in particular, make the terrible, dumb decision to say, let's go explore this deady, creepy city. And now, I will give them the benefit of the doubt and say that Moiraine, like many other times, doesn't really fully warn the group, and she's really good at giving only what she deems is enough information and not really the full picture, thinking that that will be sufficient. But the thing is she really hasn't built the relational equity with the group to really make that work. Like, they don't trust her enough for that to work. But anyways, back to Rand, Matt, and Perrin and their dumb decision. And they meet this shady character called Mordith, and he offers them this treasure. Red flag to be offered a treasure in a creepy, deadly city, but okay. So Matt being Matt, he cannot resist to poke around. The boys follow him, and in this treasure room, Mordith tries to unalive them, and they barely, and I do mean barely, escape. But not before Matt decides to take a shiny, pretty dagger as a souvenir. I mean, come on, Matt, work with us, Matt. But once they get back to the group, things do not get better. Marshadar, this evil mist that is in the city, starts flowing. And at the same time, the Trollocs and the Fades enter the city because they finally overcome their fear. And it is utter chaos and confusion. In all of this, the group gets split up. Rand, Matt, and Tom end up together sneaking on this boat, convincing this captain to take them downriver away from the craziness, while Perrin and Egwene find each other, really by happenstance, and they're on horseback going in the exact opposite direction of Rand, Matt, and Tom. And lastly, we have Moiraine, Lan, and Nynaeve, and they end up together. Moiraine, ever in planning mode, is trying to figure out what the next steps are, how she's going to find everyone and get them back together, while Nynaeve ends up tracking Moiraine and Lan again, and she joins their efforts. And everyone ends up heading to Caemlyn, and the story splits from here into 3 different threads, all of which get wild and weird. Let's cover Rand and Matt first. They have never been to a city larger than Berlin, and they just went to Berlin like 2 seconds ago. And now they're traveling through various towns to get to Caemlyn. And Tom actually mentors them, helping them learn how to earn money by performing in different inns. So Rand is playing the flute and Matt is juggling, thanks to Tom's crash courses. But as they go from village to village, Matt starts acting strange. And remember that dagger he stole from Shadar Logoth? It is cursed. Why did he do this? But anyways, it carries with it the corruption of Marshadar, and it's now infecting Matt. He grows paranoid and suspicious, and he just gets creepier and creepier by the second. And he is clutching this dagger like Gollum with the One Ring, okay? This dagger is his precious. He will not let it out of his sight. And Rand doesn't really know about the dagger yet, and he's really confused why his friend is mood swinging from normal to murderous and just being very suspicious of everyone. Now, I will say they do keep running into oddly friendly strangers and friends that are dark, if you will. But we'll put a pin in that later. Rand is having more and more nightmares with Ba'alzamon taunting him, and at one point in the town of Whitebridge, a Fade actually catches up to them, and Tom heroically distracts and fights the Fade, and he allows Rand and Mat to escape. He seemingly sacrifices himself so the boys can run, but I do think that he survived. But for now, he is presumed unalive. So Rand and Mat are left to really figure this thing out alone, and they hop on a series of very questionable rides and end up having to walk miles and miles and miles when they can't get a ride. They run into dark friends who are seemingly regular people who secretly serve the Dark One, who are trying to capture or unalive them. And these run-ins only amplify Mat's paranoia, and even Rand starts to develop trust issues. And basically anyone at this point could be a dark friend, so they're just really wary of strangers. During this trek, Rand has, I would say, a pretty pivotal moment in his journey. And in the village of the Four Kings, he channels the One Power for the first conscious time. But he doesn't realize it, or at least he's compartmentalizing it. I don't know which one. But they are cornered by a dark friend in a tavern during this storm, and Rand desperately wishes to escape. And then boom, lightning hits, and he ends up unaliving the dark friend, blowing out the wall of the inn, and it allows him and Mat to get away. And Rand's not sure how this happened, so he chalks it up to crazy luck, but he definitely channeled, which is good because they got away, but also bad because, like we talked about earlier, in this world, if a man channels the One Power, he will eventually go insane due to the corruption of it. And we're just gonna put a pin in that, and let's shift to what's happening with Perrin and Egwene. Their adventure is less dark friend heavy and a bit more spiritual. So they're lost in the wilderness after fleeing Shadar Logoth, and they're wandering, trying to figure out how to get east to Caemlyn, but they have no idea where they are going. And they end up meeting this strange man named Elias along the way, and he lives with wolves. Actual wolves. And he can also communicate with them telepathically, and through Elias, Perrin actually discovers, much to his shock and probably dismay, that he also has the abilities to talk to wolves as well. And the wolves start slipping into his mind, sending him thoughts and images, and he is freaked out. I mean, understandably so. Elias assures him that this is a natural ancient ability and it's not related to the One Power, but Perrin is still conflicted and he is having a full-blown identity crisis. And along the way, they end up spending some time with the traveling people, who also are known as the Tinkers and the people of the Leaf. And anyways, they have a lot of names. They live by the philosophy of the Leaf, and it is a philosophy of total pacifism. I mean, total pacifism, which is a very stark contrast to the utter chaos that Perrin and Egwene have been facing. And Egwene uses this opportunity to compartmentalize and mentally escape the chaos, while Perrin is like, yeah, nah, this is not for me. But you know, honestly, this whole section is just jam-packed with foreshadowing. And I really struggle with the TV show here because of some of the decisions that were made. We're not gonna get deep into the show. I will just say, if you are reading the book, definitely pay attention to the stories and the folklore in this section, because this whole doggone section, I mean really the whole book, is just filled with cryptic dreams and throwaway lines and all of these little details that seem random at first, but they are not. Know that they're gonna circle the block, come back together, and make sense. Okay. What was I talking about? Oh, yes, Elias senses that they need to go, and like ASAP. So as they're leaving, Perrin and Egwene have this hilarious back and forth. One of my, I would say like one of my favorite like back and forths. And Perrin is like, advice, no one tells us how to be a man, we just are. And Egwene is like, that is probably why y'all make such a bad job at it. And I was like, yes, ma'am, this is true in the book and true in real life, but I digress. So Perrin, Egwene, and Elias and the whole wolf pack keep heading towards Caemlyn, and they run and they hide, and Elias's bad feeling ends up coming true because they run into the White Cloaks, have a huge misunderstanding, and the White Cloaks end up attacking Perrin's group, and some of Perrin's wolf friends end up being unalived. And Perrin, seeing the wolves getting slaughtered, he just flies into this rage. He ends up unaliving two of the White Cloaks with his axe. And side note here, this is a really big moment for Perrin because the whole accidental unaliving situation with his wife that doesn't exist in the book but exists in the show that they've made up does not happen again in the book. So this is his first time unaliving a human. All of his battles up until this point have been with dark friends, people who aren't really people, if that makes sense. So this is his first time unaliving a human. One of the other interesting parts about this interaction is one of the white cloaks they encounter is actually the daddy of one of the offers that they encountered at Perrin. So put a pin in that for later. Elias is able to escape, but the white cloaks capture Perrin and Egwene, chain them up, and decide that they are going to question them, but they aren't asking questions in a regular questioning type of interview type of way. If you catch my drift, I don't know what I can say on YouTube and can't, but yeah, they're not doing regular questioning. They plan on hauling them to Amador, the White Cloak HQ, for a trial as dark friends. The situation is looking bleak, but help is on the way. So let's pivot to Moiraine, Lan, and Nynaeve. So you remember those coins that Moiraine gave the boys at the beginning of the story in the Two Rivers? Well, she's able to use those coins to track the boys. And as they're tracking the boys from behind and badly losing them, they end up finding out that Perrin and Egwene were captured by the White Cloaks. So they plan and stage this whole nighttime rescue mission, and the whole scene is intense. Moiraine creates this diversion. Nynaeve stealthily frees the horses in hopes to cut off the White Cloak's ability to come after them, and Lan frees Egwene and Perrin. And side note, we've been seeing the whispers of a growing connection between Nynaeve and Lan, but baby, when Lan was about to go back into that White Cloak camp and get his woman who ain't his woman yet because they ain't official and they haven't really told each other that they like each other, I was like, yes, sir, go get your unofficial woman. But anyways, Nynaeve ends up catching up to them just in the nick of time. They all escape the White Cloaks by the skin of their teeth, and as Nynaeve is healing Perrin's wounds, she notices that his eyes are now yellow. Moiraine overhears this, throws some serious side, but she doesn't really press it yet. So as they're reunited, well, except for Mat and Rand, they head for Caemlyn, hoping that Rand and Mat have made it to Caemlyn and are staying there. At this point, everyone is converging on Caemlyn. It's the capital of Anandor, and it's famous for its beauty, its history, and all of the political power that it has. And it is ruled by the iconic Queen Morgase. And Rand and Mat are the first to arrive in Caemlyn, and Mat by now is in his full-blown Gollum paranoia dagger situation mode, okay? He trusts no one and is borderline hostile to any and everyone except for Rand. And they take shelter in a cheap inn, and Rand is determined to see the city. Mat is like, whatever, I'm staying in my room, leave me alone, I don't want to be by anyone. So Rand goes sightseeing alone, and while out, he meets Loial, and Loial is this gentle giant of an ogre who looks intimidating on the outside, but is the exact opposite. He is such a teddy bear. He's polite and thoughtful, he loves books, and he is known for dropping world-building lore in casual conversation. Now, I will say, friend can talk. Like, I mean, this man will stop to explain 3,000 years of history before breakfast, but that's just how he is. He's just a lovable guy like that. But something to put in your back pocket is ogres traditionally live in settings. They're not really found outside of the setting unless they get the go-ahead because they need to explore or learn something. And Loial has not gotten that go-ahead. Another interesting thing about settings is it actually blocks the ability for Aes Sedai and even the Dark One and anyone in general from feeling the One power. They even are described to have this, I don't know, this like very weird or just like feeling, if you will. I don't know how to describe it, but they, like, even people who aren't able to channel the One power have described settings to be just this sense of just like, I don't know, like a woo-saw, if you will. But anyways, an interesting thing about the conversation between Loial and Rand is Loial initially thinks that Rand is an Ioman, but he's like, no, I'm from the Two Rivers. Loial is like, what? He's like, Manethrin, and he's like, oh, gotcha. And along the way, Loial drops a ton of history and lore in one of his very long stories, and he also decides by the end of it that he wants to go wherever Rand is going because he is Ta'veren. Put that in your back pocket for later. So fast forward a day or a few later, and Rand wants to watch the procession for the false dragon Logain, who we've been hearing small stories about throughout the book. And Caemlyn is on the traveling path to Tar Valon, which is where they are taking Logain. And this procession is like the Aes Sedai version of the Parade of Shame. Shame, shame, shame. But for me, at this point, I am convinced that none of the boys need to go sightseeing. Like, sit down somewhere and rest, because just no. Rand thinks of the bright idea to climb a wall to get a better view of Loghain's procession and literally falls into the garden of the palace. And who does he run into? Elaine, the daughter heir of Anandor. She's basically the princess of Caemlyn, and her brother and half-brother are also there as well. And Elaine is fascinated by Rand. I think it may be the Tavern effect, but who knows? Elaine's half-brother reports them to the guard, and they haul him off in front of Queen Morgase and her Aes Sedai advisor, Elaida. And Elaida has this foretelling about Rand, something about the world's fate resting upon him, and she's instantly super suspicious of who Rand really is. And Morgase goes against Elaida's advice and releases Rand, and Elaida is not happy about this at all. But back at the end, Rand returns to find Mat in an even worse state than he could imagine. And Moiraine and everyone else arrive in Caemlyn, and they find Rand and Mat, and the reunion is interesting. There's relief, of course, but there's also this underlying tension of secrets and feelings and all of these updates and just things that are happening internally for them. But before they really could settle in, Moiraine immediately sees Mat's condition and is like, "What did you do?" She recognizes the Shadar Logoth dagger and the evil on it, and Mat tries to stab her, and Lane is like, cha-cha, like, no, you're not getting my Aes Sedai. And Moiraine has to do this whole emergency mini healing session on Mat, and unfortunately, he can't really be healed completely by her. He has to go to Tarvalon for that. With most of the group reunited, Loial, my talkative friend, sparks up a conversation with Moiraine about how a man came to his steading and how he talked about how the Dark One wanted to blind the eye of the world and stop time itself. And then Perrin and Egwene confirmed that the Tinkers told them of a story of an Aiel man who told them the exact same story. On top of all of that, Perrin pushes the boys to tell Moiraine about their dreams, and they all confirm that Baalzamon mentioned the Eye of the World in their dream. Moiraine hears this, puts all of the puzzle pieces together, and it seems like the pattern is tugging them to the Eye of the World. And suddenly their new path is clear. They are heading to the Eye and warning the Green Man of what the Dark One is planning. But here's the problem. The Eye of the World is nowhere near where they are. It's located in the Blight, and how are they going to get there so quickly? Moiraine smiles as she's thinking and putting all of the puzzle pieces together. She looks at Loial and suggests that they use the Ways, an ancient Ogier-built gateway and pathway outside of the normal space and time that massively shortens travel time. Loial confirms hesitantly that he knows about the Ways, but he emphatically says that using the Ways would lead them to their death, and they would be swallowed by the shadow. He then goes into this long story that you need a bowl of popcorn and a drink for, but he talks about how the Ways were created by male Aes Sedai during the breaking of the world. He goes into a ton of history about the steading and the exile and the longing and the war of 100 years and the theory about the Ways and how they became corrupted. And I won't get into all that lore and history, but baby, that story was packed full of world building and just it was packed, okay? And after all of that, Moiraine decides that it's still worth the risk, and the boys hesitantly and somberly agree, and Egwene doesn't want to be left behind, and Nynaeve is like resigned because she doesn't want to leave the kids unprotected and with Moiraine by themselves, and Loial at this point can't resist because he wants to meet the Green Man, he wants to see the Eye of the World and Ta'veren. So the crew slips out of Caemlyn using a waygate and enter the Ways, and of course, as they navigate the maze like bridges and all of the platforms in the Ways, Machin Shin, the Black Wind, ends up finding them, and there's this heart-pounding escape and run as they rush to the exit to Fal Dara and enter the Borderlands to go to the Blight. So in this dramatic scene, they burst out the way gate just as the Black Wind is about to catch them, and everyone is shaken, particularly Loyal, because he is horrified by how corrupted the ways has become, because his people are the ones who made them. And now in the Borderlands, specifically in the Kingdom of Shynir, they go to Fal Dara, a fortress city, and Lord Aglamar of Fal Dara welcomes them, especially Rand, because, surprise, Lan is the uncrowned king of a lost kingdom called Malkier, and they all are gearing up for this battle with the Trolloc army, and they're hoping that the group will help them, but they're like, no, we need to go to the Blight. And while they're discussing the impending battle, Padan Fain, the man who keeps popping up before trouble starts, is found climbing the walls of Fal Dara. He's captured, Moiraine interrogates him, and we learn that Fain is basically Gollum in Rainfield, and he's the Dark One's bloodhound. He's been compelled to track the boys, and he's been following them the entire time. He's been trailing them from Caemlyn through the ways and into Fal Dara. And on top of all of that, he's behind the attack on Emond's field. So they leave Fain locked up, but he's basically a wild card in all of this evil insanity. From Fal Dara, the entire group heads into the Blight, looking for the Eye of the World. And the Blight is this corrupted wasteland where nothing is friendly. I mean, it is spooky and scary, but in a different way from Shadar Logoth. It's the very air of it is hot and foul, and the plants are poisonous, and there are monsters lurking everywhere. And they had several close calls with monsters trying to unalive them, and Nynaeve and Egwene see just how high the stakes are. And while they're resting, there's two interesting conversations happening. So the first is with Egwene and Rand, and Egwene suggests that Rand come with them to Tar Valon to become her warder when she becomes an Aes Sedai. And I was like, I was offended for Rand. Like, why would she ask that? Like, ma'am, you're a warder. But okay, let me give some grace. Maybe she knows that as an Aes Sedai, she can't marry, and the closest thing to it is that? I don't know. It just felt really dense, and I'm like, ma'am, read the room. The second conversation that's happening is between Nynaeve and Lan. It is so sweet, but so sad. Like, they directly express their feelings towards one another, but Lan refuses to even consider exploring more. Baby, this man said, I will hate the man you choose because he is not me, and love him if he makes you smile. And I was like, Lan. And then he leaves, and Nynaeve starts to cry. And if you know anything about Nynaeve, seeing her cry, or just even her expressing outward emotions, even in a semi-public environment. Then on top of that, Mr. Jordan had the absolute nerve to end the chapter like, sir. But when they wake up, they continue their journey, and they start getting attacked by the doggone trees and other creatures of the Blight, and they are literally fighting again for their lives, and things again are looking bleak. Then there's this like light at the end of the tunnel moment, and a beautiful garden in the middle of nowhere appears in the Blight, and they are greeted by the Green Man. The Green Man is the guardian of the Eye. He's a gentle giant made of plants, and he's the last known living of his kind. He's friendly and wise, and he leads them to the Eye of the World, which is a pool of pure, untainted Seidon. And the Eye was actually created after the Dark One tainted Seidon as a failsafe for the last battle. And from here, things go from 0 to 100, and I should not have been driving while listening to this section of the book. I didn't know it was going to escalate so quickly, but apparently Forsaken are now escaping the Dark One's prison, and 2 of them showed up, and I was not prepared. They tracked the group, likely drawn by the air tag of darkness, Matt, but I'm not gonna put it all on him. Maybe they were drawn by something else, but fighting erupts. So much is happening at one time, and the first Forsaken ends up unaliving the Green Man, but the Green Man uses the last of his power to unalive him, and as the Green Man is passing, which was so sad because he's so lovable, a massive tree is erected where he once was, and everyone is in shock, and while they're in shock, Moiraine actually attacks the second Forsaken, and Rand pushes pushes Egwene out the way, and Moiraine is heard screaming. I mean, Moiraine screaming, "This is bad, real bad." And here's where things get weirder. If you can imagine things getting weirder. I'm pretty sure that the Second Forsaken and Rand were battling for the Pure Dawn, and Rand ends up winning and the Second Forsaken ends up burning out. And I'm pretty sure Rand unknowingly or instinctively pulled on the Sadon, but I'm not 100% sure. Then we enter this really surreal sequence where Rand takes out the Trolloc army in Tarwin's Gap from afar, and then finds himself in this surreal dreamlike battle with Baalzamon, where Baalzamon tries to tempt and destroy him by showing him visions of his friends in pain and severely hurt. I really can't say the words of what is happening to them because of YouTube, but you get my drift. And Rand ends up resisting and attacking Baalzamon. I don't think he unalived him, but he definitely won this first battle and is knocked unconscious. And then when he comes to and is back to himself, he sees remnants of the battle, and that baby is terrified. He thinks that he killed the Dark One, but we don't know that for sure. But what we know for sure is that he definitely can channel. He is definitely the chosen one, and he is the Dragon Reborn. After the battle, Moiraine confirms it. The prophecies, the events, and everything in between points to Rand. Mat, Perrin, and Loial find the rest of the group and come to find out they were actually knocked unconscious during the battle, but when they woke up, they found this huge chest, and this chest has the dragon banner of Luce Theron, one of the seals from the Dark One's prison, which was supposed to be unbreakable or made of this unbreakable substance, and clearly it is breakable, and it ominously confirms that the prison is weakening and the Forsaken are escaping. And the third thing that was in the chest is the Horn of Valyr, and it is this legendary horn that can call upon the dead heroes of the past to fight in the last battle. And they decide to take these items back to Fal Dara with them, and on their way back, Rand lies to Mat, Perrin, and Loial about what happened during the battle. The book ends with this mix of triumph and foreboding. Like, they won the battle, but it's very much like a we won this round type of situation, not a happily ever after situation. And everyone seemingly who knows about Rand and what's going on with Rand is going to keep his secret for now. But we end with Moiraine eavesdropping on a conversation between Rand and Egwene and quietly saying, "The dragon is reborn." And that's the Eye of the World in a very chaotic nutshell. And mind you, this is book 1 of 14. Here's the thing about Eye of the World. It starts off as this classic farm boy chosen one story, but Mr. Jordan really sets up this incredibly complex world where nothing is simple. The magic system is fascinating. The world building is insane. And by the end, you realize that it's not just about good and evil. It's about power and corruption and destiny and friendship and fate versus free will and what it costs to save the world. Is it long? Yes. Is it worth it? Absolutely. Just know, if you are committing to this epic fantasy, you are signing up for a marathon and not a sprint. So thank you so much for hanging out with me for this very long but very fun recap. What's the longest series that you've committed to? And what is your favorite book in the Wheel of Time series? Be sure to drop that down below. And until the next time, happy reading. Bye, y'all.